I was born in August of 1970, and at that time, Richard Nixon, a Republican, was the President of the United States. He's followed by Gerald Ford, another Republican, who was then followed by a Democrat, Jimmy Carter, who was the United States President from 1977 to 1981. In the 50 years I've been alive, there have been a total of 3 Democratic presidents over 20 years and 6 Republicans over 31 years. During every round of elections, there are topics that come and go, and others reflecting current events, but it seems no matter what, the economy is always a key issue. And let's face it, without jobs, people don't have money, people don't pay taxes, and the whole system sort of stalls. Each group tries to convince people the outcome will be better if they vote for them. But can we look back and test any of these claims? I decided to compare the stock market results from Democratic and Republican presidents throughout my lifetime. It's easy to match up the commonly used S&P 500 results with which party held office in each year. Now, I realize that stock market performance and the economy are not exactly the same, but for this particular illustration, a simple number like the S&P 500 performance is easy to evaluate, and since it tracks the yearly success of the 500 largest companies in the United States, it is certainly an important economic figure. Do you think one group did better than another? And if so, do you think you can tell who won? Well, here is the raw data from which I got from Wikipedia. Can you tell who won now? If you're like most people, it's still hard to tell just from the raw data. But how about a graph? Is it easier to make a decision now? The average or mean S&P 500 for years with a Democratic president has been about 15.8%. And for the Republican presidents, it's been about 9.5%. The best year for Democrats was under President Clinton in 1995, when the S&P 500 return was 37.58%. And for the Republican Party, the best year was in 1985 under President Ronald Reagan at 31.73%. Interestingly, President Obama is the only president during my lifetime for which the S&P 500 did not have a single negative year. Now, if we add 95% confidence intervals to the data, we see a great deal of overlap in these values. And running a standard independent samples t-test, we get a p-value of about 0.09, which generally would be considered not statistically significant by most standards, although some would argue it is approaching significance or it is significant with a p-value of less than 0.10. So here are some conclusions. First, this data suggests that there is some positive correlation between the S&P 500 performance and having a particular president in office. It does not suggest cause and effect, however. Being a good scientist, you always want to keep your mind open to the fact that perhaps other factors are at play. Perhaps the actions of the House or Senate or the development of some new technologies at that particular time were the actual cause of the ups and downs, and not actually which candidate was president at the time. Number 2, as one of my favorite professors, Dr. Matt Riggs, said, even if you forget how to run the statistical tests, at least use the data and make a graph to make decisions. Graphs are very helpful at allowing us to visualize the relationship and connections between numbers and number sets. If you can, always make a graph. Number 3, once again, the S&P 500 was used in this example because it is easy to measure and find. It is an important number, but it does not reflect every measurable variable related to the overall economy or economic picture. Number 4, if you want to play around with what ifs, If the next president of the United States is a Democrat and the S&P 500 matches the best returns of President Clinton in 1995, in 2 years the data would reflect a clearly significant difference. And going the other direction, if the next president is a Republican and manages to match the returns of President Reagan in 1985, it would take 43 consecutive years of this performance for the data to reflect a significant difference in favor of the Republicans. I doubt we will see either of those happen, but you can always hope. And finally, in this example, I make the case that one can evaluate Democrats or Republicans based on stock market performance. But what matters to you? The point being, any area of interest can be evaluated by you. Ask your question, find reliable data, and make a graph. What does the data tell you, and how can we use data and graphs to make better decisions?